we came to the conclusion that we cannot reform it and we cannot abolish it. So, turning back question to you, if we want to move on that, it's impossible to do by ourselves. It's impossible to invoke a legal aspect of it that we do something unilateral. We have to bring in the provinces, and if the provinces want to, travel, you have 2 lawyers here. Incredibly complex issues when you put a manual detail because it's at the heart of Canada. And indeed, abolish, reform, new Senate, we cannot do it ourselves. It's impossible. We're locked.
Well, I think it's pretty clear from anybody who saw the debates that Justin Trudeau is ready to govern. I think that the Tory attack ads just show, once again, the type of campaign that Conservatives are running. They're running a negative campaign, attacking the others. The Liberals are running a resolutely positive campaign. For me, the goal is not attacking our opponents. We can certainly say where we have policy differences. For example, we have policy differences in the Senate. We don't believe, like the NDP, that it can be abolished because we don't want to reopen the Constitution. We all saw what happened with Meech Lake and Charlottetown, and how when you open constitutional talks, every single group within the country comes with their own demands and leads to a national crisis. Nor do we believe, like the Conservatives, nothing can be done. The Liberals have done something. We kicked out our senators. We said they're not part of the Liberal caucus. So that instead of appointing political hacks to the Senate, we should appoint Canadians of great distinction, that all parties can get to be involved in looking at their CVs and trying to have a consensus committee that comes up with people of distinction that are not part of a party. And to me, at least, that reforms the Senate a bit. So why is Trudeau ready? Well, Justin Trudeau and I are around the same age. The idea that somebody's not ready because they're too young is something that galls at me. I was first elected at 24 years old. People didn't run around saying at 24 years old I wasn't ready. And I think I've proven myself over 21 years of public service that not only was I ready, I've done a great job. Justin Trudeau is only 2 years younger than Stephen Harper was when he became Prime Minister. The idea that age makes someone not ready is simply appalling. He has a vision, and he has a resolutely positive message, and I think that's what we need in Canada.
Yeah, no, things for sure in Quebec went a little loopy with the whole MICAB issue for sure. It has been an issue that has affected NDP voters in particular, but I think things have definitely flattened. I think the debate last week, I think the Mont-Royal interview, and I just think the kind of rock solid support we have in general across the country, very even across the country, really puts us in a position with 2 weeks to go to ramp right up and create distance with the other parties. I mean, I'm very, very excited about our prospects. I think we've weathered the recent storm, and I know in NDG-Westmount the number of volunteers we have coming in, the number of people who are putting signs on their houses, the kind of intensity that we see on the door-to-door, this intensity to want change and to see NDP as the only real, authentic party of change. We've played ping pong back and forth between Liberals and Conservatives over 150 years. We have. And we have cynicism in this country as a result, frankly, of that ping pong, broken promises, scandals, bad behavior. The only way we can break that is with a party who is the official opposition. We almost have 100 seats. Liberal Gang has 35. Of the 35 that they have, 8 are former cabinet ministers. 8 are former Liberal cabinet ministers. It's got some new elements, including Anthony, but it is the same old Liberal Party. We want authentic, genuine change. And I think over the next 2 weeks, this will return. The only party that offers it, the only party that offers it is the NDP.
Well, it would be nice if people read our platform more, but of course that's heavy reading. To try and change the point of view of people when their minds are set, it's actually what's happening right now. We're falling into the same old pattern that Canada has always fallen into. We get close to a breakthrough. You know, the NDP almost made it, but we're still stepped back because we're a little scared of what's going to happen, right? But we have to get over that fear. If you voted green, imagine if there was a green wave. At least in Quebec, there could be actual change here, because Quebec is already environmentally conscious, right? But aside from that, our other issues, we want to build an economy as well, but just one that doesn't rely on polluting the earth. I don't know if anyone else notices, but every time I drive into Montreal, there's smog. Every single morning there is smog now. It used to be once in a while, but what, for the last 2 years or so, every morning there's smog to drive into. Is that the kind of world you want to live in? If it is, then be my guest, you know, and make some money on oil, invest in what you want, and to hell with the future, right? They'll deal with it. They'll deal with it. I'm sure that a miracle pill will come anytime soon to clean up the water, the environment. I mean, right now we're facing the challenge of billions of liters of waste being dumped into the, you know, I thought maybe we were going to have a beach in Pointe, but I guess not. Or it'll be really warm, right? But to try and convince you of other things, you have to read about us. You have to investigate. You have to look for yourself. You can't trust sound bites from other people. Elizabeth May has tried as much as she can, and I think she's been an exemplary parliamentarian, trying to get our voice, our little voice of our conscience. Have a conscience, have a conscience. There are choices to be made, yes, and some of them are going to be tough. But why weren't we involved in the TPP? Why wasn't everyone involved in that? It passed today, does everyone know that? It's passing and we have no idea what's in it. What's going to happen to all our industries? Is it going to help us? Well, my big question is, why do we have garlic from China when we can grow garlic in Quebec? We're not you might think we're a one-party issue, and maybe down deep, yes, we're a bit too focused on the environment, but we have ideas for different to use technology to advance us. Why can't we invite Tesla to Quebec and have a Tesla factory here and build up our own auto industry again? Yes, it'll cost a lot, but in the long run, we'll have a better environment to live in, won't we?
Thank you.
It's an investigation that you have to do yourselves.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to get into the themes, and the candidates will be allowed to banter back and forth, politely, of course. Okay, so the first question is I'll direct it at Mr. Hughes. What role should the federal government have in building and maintaining social housing?
So, social housing, I'm the former Director General of the Old Brewery Mission, biggest homeless shelter here in Montreal and in Quebec, all of Eastern Canada actually. It's an organization that has come a long way. It was started in 1889 during the Social Gospel. The Methodists started it up, just seeing the older alcoholic men having no place to go. And actually, the Old Brewery itself, the name of it comes from the place where these gentlemen, 50-plus gentlemen that would hang out. It was an abandoned brewery building. And so the name just stuck, the Old Brewery. That's where they were given soup and so on. It's turned into a really massive organization from a community point of view. It's one which in 1995 had 150 beds. And then the Liberal government under Paul Martin cut affordable housing totally in the country. They cut transfers to the provinces, including transfers for health and social services, which eliminated. The result was that by 2005, the Old Brewery Mission had grown from 150 beds to 450 beds. Massive homelessness had hit, and it wasn't just here in Montreal, right across the country. That was not entirely due to the actions and inactions of the Liberal government at the time, but very much part of it, very much a significant part of it. So the Old Brewery as it grew, it actually had to start to change because inventorying, warehousing men and women in homelessness is just not good enough. And so what we did was started to consider options instead of just providing a meal and a bed, to say how can we actually help people out of homelessness on a permanent basis. So the actual organization was transformed into one which wasn't just about homelessness, but was about housing. So that's where I learned about housing, and we've built 48 units of social housing at the organization over my time, either finished or begun on my watch.
Mr. Hughes, so how's that gonna translate into the NDP
Right.
and social housing?
So I was just going to say that the social housing file is problematic because the Conservative government has not renewed the social housing agreements with the provinces. And I used to be the Deputy Minister of Social Services in New Brunswick, and that's what I was getting to, is that we're losing social housing stock every year. Thousands of units are actually coming off the grid every year. So our commitment is to actually renew those social housing agreements and stabilize the social housing stock that we have today. And then start to build out new social and affordable housing units right across the country. And we've got very significant commitments in that regard. We also have very significant commitments in regards to retrofitting 50,000 homes over the next 4 years, and 15,000 apartment units, so they become much more affordable in and of themselves, and people are not forced to leave. So those are three elements of many that we have in the housing.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Sagala, would you like to respond to that?
Well, just a few numbers to tell you our commitment toward. Every year we commit $2.3 billion, and help 600,000 families with it. And since each year CMHC grants over $1 billion loans for low-cost social housing projects, I know there have been mortgages that last year in 2014 that for co-ops that came to conclusion. And this will be an issue we will have to think about something, because I understand that some people there, they're phoning me and I talk with them. And I was talking to Russell Copeman about this as well. Apparently their co-op haven't put aside any money to keep it, you have to put like 5 to 8% of the money each year in theory to maintain a building, according to co-op how it works. But they didn't do it for a variety of reasons. Some of them say, yeah, but I just arrived at co-op 2 years ago, and the management was not always kept with the highest, on the highest standing order. So there's an issue there, because we've paid for the house, but the house should be well maintained, but now we have to remortgage it somehow, so we have to come with other commitments. So probably we will have to sit down with them and see what could be done, for that.
But just so you know,
Yeah.
that's the program. That is the affordable housing program, the social housing contracts that the Conservative government, year after year after year, are letting lapse. The Conservative government used to actually pay for those mortgages, but then it stopped. It said it's not paying it anymore.
Yeah, because
So you've had 10 years.
Or 10 years, there's a period of time, where the mortgage should be paid, and then the co-op belongs to the tenant.
I think in the end result.
Go ahead, please.
I think in the end result, though, both the Liberals and the NDP say we're going to renew these agreements. We have one of these buildings in Côte St. Luc. It's the Caldwell House. Right now, based on Conservative policies, they've lost their funding. And we have 3 social housing units in Côte St. Luc, and we're in the process of rezoning to allow for a 4th, which is a second Canadian brick house. And I think one of the things, Jim has an admirable record with respect to knowing about social housing. I do as well. As a mayor of a city, we are in the process ourselves as a municipality launching a social housing initiative, because we have so many people who want to be able to stay in our cities but can no longer afford to do so. And that's why this is a real important federal government role. The Liberal Party is committed to investing more in our infrastructure than ever before, and that includes our social infrastructure. We're proposing putting $125 billion over the next 4 years into infrastructure. That includes roads, sidewalks, water mains, aqueducts, filtration systems, things we need as municipalities to continue to run. We have a huge infrastructure deficit in this country. But it also includes huge investments in social housing, because we have more and more seniors, we have a growing seniors population, we have a growing population of working poor. We need to increase the social housing unit. So the Liberal Party is absolutely committed to doing that.
Mr. Cox, any rebuttal? You'll come right after, Mr. Sagala. Go ahead. Do you have anything to say about social housing?
Well, our idea is a bit more radical. We believe that every Canadian should have a livable wage. It's a big idea, and it's an expensive idea, but diverting funds from old technology and old fossil fuel resources and giving it back to the people of Canada is what we're all about. We also, it hasn't really hit Montreal as much as it has some of our other metropolitan areas, but the Conservatives, what's it called? Sorry about this, but the Venture Capital Pilot Program Now, this program allows foreign investors to come into Canada and buy up condos like there's no tomorrow, jacking up. This is especially true in Vancouver, and I lived there for a while, and the prices are just unaffordable for most Canadians because half the buildings are empty because they're investment buildings for offshore people to hide their money and they basically wash their money, right? What we want to do is stop that. To stop that altogether and reinvest in Canada. Yes, you know, in a way, I think the Greens are probably a little protectionist. But I believe that Canadians need a little bit of protecting from the last 10 years of giving away bits and pieces of Canada, 35 years to the Chinese. Our wood goes to the United States with hardly any money coming back to us. Where's our cut? I don't get anything from all these deals. Does the average Canadian make anything? No, the banks do. The corporations do. But what about the average Canadian? If you can invest, you'll make some money. But what about us who don't have that extra cash that are working, the working poor they call them, right? That's the new middle class, is the working poor. And our platform is to try and help those people. The rich people can help themselves and maybe pay a little bit more because they've had it well. They've had it good over the last 10 years, and maybe a bit of socialism is good for Canada at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Sagala, be very patient. You have the last word on social development.
Well, I invite the people who are interested by these issues. You can go to Anthony's neighborhood as well, but you can go, you know, by riding. And here, for instance, I can name you Action Plan Canada.gc.ca Action Plan. Will tell you the project that have been funded and realized in a neighborhood or in a riding. You know, there's 8 of them here. The complexity about low cost is, take for instance Benny Farms. We all know about it because it's nearby. Okay, Benny Farms belong to the federal government. It used to house the veterans after the Second World War. So when they decided to say, okay, let's renovate it, they did it at once and they did it the way they wanted to do it. But what Mayor Koopman was mentioning to me when I met with him, and he is in charge of the city for this issue, he says you should see the sandwich, the multi-layer sandwich of financing that comes into social housing, low-cost housing, HLM and all that. It's all various degree of participation. All the contracts that have been signed, certain have been reviewed, new participation up to X%. Typically speaking, the federal pays 30% of it. But the amount and the scope of the program and the units are going to be built or renovated belongs to Quebec, which with the municipality decide on a certain amount. You know, this year we're going to build that much, that number instead, see? And he says typically Montreal will get 40% of that. It's like an unwritten rule. But he says the problem is that in Quebec at the moment, they're lowering the number of, but perhaps Anthony can confirm this, you know, they're lowering the number of units they plan to build next year. And this has nothing to do, it ends up for the Fed. Fed, you know, money's there, tell us where you want to see it, you know, infrastructure program comes there, and low cost has its own budget. But it's Quebec that has to decide. So the problem is to try to find a conduit, you know, between all the various players. You know, municipality say my project is priority. They go to Quebec, they make a list, they say we'll have such commitment this year, 30% will be funded by the federal. It's complex in nature. It's not possible for the federal politician to just say we're going to go to Quebec and build these things.
But what is true is you can renew the existing agreements without provincial input. I mean, one of the problems.
Yes, yeah, exactly, like what you just mentioned.
Exactly.
Like that. That is something we can do.
Yeah. But you haven't.
But no, we do.
For 10 years you haven't.
1 billion a year.
I've actually,
Yeah, 1 billion
when
a
I
year.
was a deputy in New
1
Brunswick,
billion
we
a
sat
year.
down with CMHC and we said, you know, you have to renew the agreements. We're losing housing stock every year. And she said, too bad.
Yeah, I mean, you should speak to Richard, you should speak to
Basically,
Project
that's
Genesis. You should see
that's the
all of the
situation.
different housing stock where the agreements have not been renewed year after year after year, because now compounding one after the other so that more and more buildings are no longer covered. This is where the real problem is. I mean, there's many problems, and I agree with you, in terms of creating new units. That is not only a federal problem, Quebec is not cooperative, but on renewing the existing agreements, that is the existing government.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to another topic. I'll direct this to Mr. Housefather.
Okay.
Why do you think kneecaps have become an election issue?
That's related to social housing.
Oh, we're moving off the subject.
Oh, we're moving off to social housing, I see.
We're still in the main theme of Canadian society.
So this
we're
is
good for the
something I understand. So this is something that I actually feel very strongly about. I think Tom Mulcair said it best at the debate last week, where he said this is a distraction. This is a huge distraction. We have exactly two women in all of Canada, out of 600,000 people being sworn in the last 5 years, that have asked to wear the niqab at a citizenship ceremony. Yet right before an election, you have a government, because people are not satisfied with their handling of the core national issues, the environment, the economy, and other issues, tries to find a wedge issue in order to win an election. Does it sound familiar to you? Because I remember this. The Parti Québécois a couple of years ago proposed the Charter of Values that said that a woman cannot wear a hijab, a man cannot wear a turban or a kippah, and work for our hospitals, our schools, our municipalities, our province. I fought against that. I led a rally in front of our city hall, bringing together religious leaders and mayors from across the island. I lobbied our municipal organization to come out against it, because I felt it was anathema to the values that we as Canadians hold, a violation of religious liberties. In this case, specifically, the Conservatives have chosen to target one group within Canada, a very, very tiny minority fringe group that is a fringe group within the Islamic Society of Canada. Very, very few Muslims in Canada, very few Muslim women choose to wear a niqab. And shutting these women out and saying you can't become citizens when you've made all the other qualifications for the process makes absolutely no sense. They are willing, and the process is already, and it's happened before, that a woman who wishes to wear a niqab unveils herself in front of a woman in private and then is led into the ceremony. So there's no doubt about the identity of the person. So now we're just getting into the issue of when she takes an oath that lasts about 60 seconds, can she be unveiled? My view as an attorney, this is a violation of our Charter of Rights. So if Mr. Harper was really concerned about this issue, and by the way, he didn't act on it between 2005 and 2011 when they passed this regulation, he would have referred this question to the Supreme Court. He would have said to the Supreme Court, which is a perfectly proper thing for a federal government to do, are we allowed to pass a law that says a woman cannot wear a niqab at a citizenship ceremony? And if the court said yes, that is constitutional and not a violation of freedom of religion and falls within reasonable limits, then we could have had a political debate about whether it was wise to do so, but that's not what he did. He knows that he wanted to create a political issue where you would have people who are afraid of this weird thing where somebody's covering their face vote for the Conservatives even if they don't like them on anything else. And I think it's frankly shameful. And the only way you could pass this law, in my view, is to use the notwithstanding clause. We as English-speaking Quebecers remember the last time the notwithstanding clause was used. It was used to ban English from commercial signs in Quebec, when the courts all ruled you couldn't do that. I think the notwithstanding clause should be removed from the Charter, and I certainly don't agree with its use in relation to the niqab.
Mr. Sagala, you might have an opinion on this. Would you care to give it?
Well, we said that on the first 100 days, if we're elected, we're going to pass a law that make it mandatory to uncover yourself taking the oath. That's it.
Mr. Hughes, any opinion?
And that law will be illegal.
Surrounded by distinguished learned from the law.
Now, I understand. I was in a senior's home the other day, and there's this lady who asked me. She said, "You know, this niqab issue. It makes me nervous to see people with the niqab, and I don't understand what's going on behind the veil. It makes me scared and nervous." And I asked. I said, "Have you actually ever met and talked with a woman who's wearing the veil?" She said, "No. It just makes me nervous." I said, "You've never had any communication or discussion about this?" No. See, this is the point. This is an issue. This is an issue about our relationships. This is an issue about our knowledge of our neighbors, or lack of knowledge of our neighbors. This is an issue that has to be dealt with in exactly the opposite manner that is being dealt with today. Right now, it's being, and I agree entirely with Anthony's characterization, that this is being dealt with as a wedge political issue for uniquely political purposes. And it has the impact of trying to demonize and vilify, in particular, women who've chosen to wear a veil, in a very, very specific set of circumstances. And in doing so, it creates another layer of phobia, Islamophobia, that we don't, that is absolutely unacceptable in a society as normally liberal and as progressive as ours. And it just is, I'm beside myself that this has become the significant issue that it's become, not only because there are so many other issues to deal with, so many other significant issues to deal with, but because even on, if I may, the face of it, on the face of it, this issue is a manifest violation of, albeit the very few women, the women who choose to put the veil on for the ceremony. As Anthony said, we know who they are when they take the oath because they have unveiled themselves. When they take the oath, if they choose to wear the veil or they choose to wear anything else, just let them. Let them. It's for ceremonial purposes. If it's a religious expression or freedom of expression, wear what you want. Anybody should wear what they want. And if you think that women are this is a symbol of oppression, that these women are actually being oppressed, and I frankly understand that some people may have that opinion. And it's not absolutely always the case. I read a beautiful article, maybe some of you did, about a young woman who wears the niqab because it's her choice. Her sisters don't wear the niqab. She's not married. It's not being forced upon her. She wears it because it's her choice. If, however, that is not the case, if you believe that they are being victimized because of a hierarchical or authoritarian structure within the family, the last thing we should do is victimize them again by removing their right to citizenship.
That's exactly, I mean, if it's okay, that's exactly right. Because if you think about it, right, let's say in some cases that is being forced upon a woman. So the husband or father who's forcing it upon her gets to become a citizen and she doesn't. That's the backward logic in this entire thing. And now, in the last debate, the French debate on Friday night, Mr. Harper, because the only people, by the way, that agree with the Conservatives on this, and I can tell even Richard seems a little uncomfortable with this issue, is the Bloc Québécois. And the Bloc Québécois wants to go further. The Bloc Québécois says that women with a niqab should not be allowed to work for government or even receive government services. Think about that. A woman with a niqab has a heart attack. She is brought into the hospital, but under this law, a woman with a niqab is not allowed to receive government services. So the doctor should sit there and let her die because she's wearing a niqab. I mean, what an absurd premise, right? But that's the slippery slope that you fall into. Once you ban one religious symbol, then you can ban the next religious symbol, and the next religious symbol, and the next religious symbol, and extend. First you can't use it at a citizenship ceremony, then you can't use it to vote, then you can't use it to get government services. What next? That's why in the civil libertarian in me tells me that this is just a horrible idea used simply for political purposes, and it's frankly embarrassing as a Canadian to see our government doing this.
Okay, Mr. Cox, you get the last word.
I think this issue makes me the saddest. As a wedge issue, when we're honest with ourselves, at least when I'm honest with myself, I think it's targeted at the soft racism that is prevalent here. The Pearl des Hommes, right? And I think that's something that the Conservatives have hopped on because they know it hits the base of us. But we live in a free country, so shouldn't they be allowed? And don't you think that after a while, they'll make their own decisions anyways? Eventually, either their daughter will say, why do you keep wearing it? Maybe they'll stop their religious practices because they'll see a secular society and go, you know what, I want that. The Green Party believes it's up to the person. It makes me sad that I have one question to ask all the people who have an issue with the niqab. Do you get terrified at ski hills? That's my question. You can't see the person there. What are they thinking? What are they thinking? I don't know. So really, it's that much of a ridiculous thing. At this moment, this is not an election issue. This is an issue for after we decide the important things of an election, and we can move on after that. And if it's still an issue, then we should discuss it in Parliament as parliamentarians, instead of just trying to get those little points with those people who are terrified of les hommes. You know? Okay,
we're going to move on now to another theme. We're going to start talking about youth issues. I'll direct the first question to Mr. Hughes. If you were graduating from university, how would you find a job?
Well, it's funny, I have a 21-year-old, I have a 19-year-old, I have a little 14-year-old, who's not there yet, but my 21-year-old is gonna graduate, we use the G word in the family now, graduate, from Queen's next year, and he's scratching his head about that very issue. It is a tough market for young people. About 13% of young people in Canada are struggling to find work right now. It's a little less than double the unemployment rate, but a really high number. In Montreal, it's even higher in terms of the unemployment rate of youth. Just to let you know, and as a matter of context as well, I started an organization 20 years ago called Youth Employment Services, now called Yes Montreal. Excellent, someone nodding, knows Yes, excellent.
Yes.
One of the premier organizations helping young people try to find and keep work here in Montreal, and especially young English people who thinking that there may not be opportunities elsewhere, and immediately choose Quebec, choose to leave Quebec. We've seen this over the years. It's actually stabilized. It's actually much better than it used to be. Back in the day when we formed it, though, the intention of young people to leave was massive. So Yes has done its part to try to help young people choose Quebec, English people choose Quebec because they help them get the kind of networks, the kind of skills, including French language skills, to try to make the decisions to stay here. But ultimately, the NDP believes this is a big issue. It's a personal passion of mine. We've got a really exciting suite of programs to try to roll out to help young people, opportunities that we're going to try to present in the job market. We have a proposed act to put before the House as the government to try to prevent young people who are getting internships, because this is such in the companies they're working for. Unpaid internships is huge right now, and we have to put some controls around that. We have this massive infrastructure program we're proposing as well. We want to make sure young people get their share of those opportunities, and other things. But ultimately, this is a big an issue, and as I say, the NDP takes it very, very seriously, and I do as well at a personal level.
I'd like to hear Mr. Sagala, just as an addendum to that question, same question, how would you find a job, and what would the Conservatives do if re-elected to help people find jobs?
This is why I'm in politics, okay?
Good.
But I have to talk a little bit about myself. Hopefully I'm on board with tears with it. I am an entrepreneur in the that deal in the wine industry. I'm a lecturer for Bordeaux Business School, UBC, and Vinitaly. I work with Sonoma State as well. We're doing good, it's fine. To me, entrepreneurship is the key word, okay? Especially for you guys that are in liberal arts and things like that. I can associate with you, why? Because me, when I was in the beginning of my 20s, I had 4 diplomas from the Conservatory of Music, okay? What a prospect for a life, for a professional life, okay? Teaching in high school, I tried that, I almost committed suicide. Unbelievable what I've seen there. And then I decided, I said, but I knew it when I was studying. That was the difference, okay? When I was studying, I tried to put myself to the limit because I didn't have a lot of money. I was using this pré-bourse thing, you know, and I was always having the maximum because I found a way that if you study 12 months a year, you don't get a penalized period when in the summer they will claw back so much money, you know, because in theory you should be working there. And what it did is that when I was in the conservatory, I said to myself, I know, you know, the prospects are very dim. But nevertheless, I will acquire a discipline of work, and I will push myself to the limit. So much so that after that, I'll find something which I like, and I'm sure it will be easier. And I did. You know, I started something in real estate and took my Visa card and put a deposit on a house, and that's how I started. And then I did that because entrepreneurship was key. And I say, if I do that, I called the shots a bit, then I can continue with the arts, and I was, you know, wanted to do a few things like that, teach at the level I wanted to. When I was in Ottawa, I was in the Lighthouse program. I wanted to bring, you know, I had, you know, 20 years.
So let's get back to the original question.
So the question is, entrepreneurship empowers you, okay? If you expect entitlement from what government is going to give to you, it won't happen. Never, don't believe the promises they will tell you, because if it's to become a civil servant, if it's to join, I think it's something of the past. The situation of the 70s are not applying to the 21st century, you know? But entrepreneurship can make you write your own story. It just requires that you're being very good at what you do and you pursue your passion. You might not score the best in terms of salary, but you'll have a balanced life from what you can do, the freedom, and this is what I believe in entrepreneurship, okay? So it's you to write your story, and not to look to the politicians to say, you know, okay, we're gonna create so much jobs, but if those jobs, they say we're gonna spend so much money doing that, what will happen when you have created too much debt or the program will stop? Well, then you will be without a job anymore. So this is what I believe in.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Mr. Housefather. No, that was a great answer. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. So I think Richard's answer exactly exemplifies the difference between the conservative and liberal philosophies on this issue. He's basically saying the government should do absolutely nothing to help us get jobs, when there's an 11% unemployment rate on the island of Montreal and youth unemployment is over 13%. We don't agree with that. We are planning not only to create jobs through that massive infrastructure program that I talked about, $125 billion, but also create jobs by investing in youth. We want to create 120,000 jobs for young people over the next 3 years by investing $2.8 billion in youth. We want to invest in green technology to create jobs in new areas where we can not only enhance the Canadian economy, but find jobs in technology for young people. And most importantly, I always come back to the individual, because these debates dwell on political parties a lot and the political party's philosophy. But I really believe as well you need to look at the individual candidate and what they will do in their own riding. Now, I'm not in the same riding as these guys, but I also have a similar experience to Jim with respect to youth employment. When I got out of school, and we got out of school at the same time because he spent a little bit longer time than I did at school, you know, getting out of McGill Law, didn't have law degrees, how difficult a time they had as Anglos getting jobs in Montreal, and so many were leaving. So within the Jewish community, I got involved in starting an organization called Pro-Montreal, which is an organization that brought lawyers, helped them translate their CVs, helped them develop their French skills, and that's today called Agence Homens, but it still exists in the Jewish community where you have jobs. And now it's open to everyone, not only the Jewish community. I was also involved in Alliance Quebec, on the Executive Alliance Quebec at the time that we launched Youth Employment Services, and Jim was right there at the helm of Youth Employment Services when it started. And that's still in existence today. So I see they get elected, would be willing to work together to bring together all these job banks that exist in our ridings, all the young people who need jobs. Many of the communities are not as developed as the Anglophone and Jewish communities. The black community doesn't have this. The Filipino community doesn't have this. We bring together all these communities, and the MP has a central role in bringing the job banks, getting the private employers together, and trying to help our young people find jobs here in Montreal. I see a significant role for the local MP beyond our party platforms in doing that, and it's something that I'm very committed to as well.
Gabe, you get the last word.
We're youth-centered, like I've said before, and our Youth Community and Environmental Service Corp is one of our primary things, which will get 40,000 youth working. We also want to ban internships, unpaid internships. That's one of our major goals. I don't think that's fair for youth. When you have an entrepreneur in poverty, and you find your mother's alone working because McDonald's while you're taking care of your 3 brothers, you haven't got the impetus to go, you know what, I think I'll start a business. You're there, I guess I'm going to have to join my mom at McDonald's so that we can pay the bills for our household. So that's very nice for like middle class people to think of being an entrepreneur. And I myself was helped by Yes Services to become an entrepreneur. So, but I'm surrounded in my area by poverty and by people who are just hanging on by their nails, holding on to their homes or being able to pay next month's rent. So that's very nice, and it would be nice if everyone could be an entrepreneur. But we have to think of the kids who are trying to help support their families. How can we help them? Should they be going to McDonald's? That's not going to support much. We believe that we should be helping these kids by offering them actual jobs to pursue something, to focus them in I find that a lot of the time, I was raised with lots of dreams. To dream big, dream big. I pursued acting in Toronto. I ran off to Vancouver with a woman because it was something to do and go explore, right? You know, so I've led an adventurous life, but I've had something to always fall back on, right? My parents are quite, I just want to finish. Not everyone has had the blessed life that I had. Those who are suffering right now need the. It's not for corporations or banks. We're people, and you're people. The government should be for us as a people, not for the corporation, by the corporation, but for the people. And I think it starts with youth. And we have to support poverty. We have to eliminate poverty in these youth and help them guide towards maybe careers that are not so dreamy. Maybe show them that you can make a great living as a plumber. Become an electrician. You know, and that's a lot of money in those fields that they don't see because they've been piped this dream of the 15 minutes of fame. If I could just fuels that all the time. So we intend to, as Greens, to try and bring them back down to earth. Get a nice base so that you can say, you know what, there are other options. You don't have to be the next rapper to make a lot of money. You can have a nice life as helping your community, as the local plumber, as the local electrician. Well, that's my point.
Okay, Mr. Sagala, then Mr. Housefather, you get a final rebuttal on this point. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's not a question of being an entrepreneur that should be flashing like this. It's about creating value. And this you can do in the for-profit or the non-profit. You have two persons here who serve the public, and Jim, I think, has exemplified that. But at the core of it, it's about creating value. Michael Porter. It's not a question of pursuing money. It's creating value. So you can create value. You say, yeah, but what about me? I don't care about having to drive a fancy car or something. Yeah, but you're gonna go, and perhaps you do a bit like Jim, and you go to these things where you try to help others, and you feel good about yourself. This you get repaid immediately when you find a cause or something that you like, and you pursue. You're creating value. And money will be associated, because if you do something of value, somebody else will recognize it. Otherwise, you're focused. You say, I thought it was creating a lot of I didn't find my audience. But serve the others by becoming in the public service or, non-for-profit and things like that. It's your call, pursue it. There's so much to do. We don't measure the entrepreneur, Donald Trump, you know what I mean? My goodness.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
Okay, Mr. Housefather, you get the final word on this.
Thanks. So I think that this conversation sort of defines the different approaches between parties. I've worked in the last 20 years of my career, which is essentially my only job, have been in a private corporation where I'm a general counsel, and I understand the importance of entrepreneurship. I also understand the importance of public service because I've also been a mayor and a councillor at the same time, and I sort of managed, luckily, to combine both of my passions. But I don't believe that you can get there only on entrepreneurship. There needs to be government investment in terms of training programs to help people find careers, and they could be plumber or electrician. I totally agree with you. At the same time, there has to be a balance that government is not there not to serve. What I hear from the Greens, I respect a lot what you said, but the government, of course, has to serve banks and corporations. The society has to go and survive because all of our different institutions are strong and stable. The government is there to make sure our corporations are strong, that the corporate tax rate is low enough that we have corporations coming and locating in Canada.
But it's almost at the expense of people.
Well, see, I don't agree. I think a liberal vision, and this is where, again, I encourage all of you to be liberals, the liberal vision is middle of the road. The liberal vision takes neither extreme. You don't have to be at an extreme. You can balance security with individual rights. You can balance a strong economy and entrepreneurship with state intervention to make sure that where there is a problem with the private market, the state comes in and helps. And I think for me, that's where I'm more comfortable. I think Canadians are a middle of the road people, and I think the Liberal Party is the middle of the road party.
Okay.
It hasn't always demonstrated that, though.
I agree.
It hasn't historically.
And nor has the NDP when you've been in power in provinces.
Okay.
I mean, we're not there to defend, I think we both agree, we're not there to defend 100 years of history of different parties in the CCF and the NDP or the Liberals. Look, Conservatives have bad record and sometimes the Liberals have had a bad record, sometimes the NDP has had a bad record and sometimes. Today, let's look at where our parties are today, who our leaders are today, who our candidates are today, and make a decision based on today, not what happened 20 years ago.
But the trouble is, history can repeat itself as well. Plus, if you look at Alberta, for instance, just with the new NDP, they're being blamed for problems that were created of the 40 years of Conservatives, are they not? So they have to try and deal with this 40 years of karma and try and say, how are we going to fix this? And try not to be the enemy of the people of Alberta. But they're going to have to do something because it's such a mess. It's
And you don't hear me blaming. I don't think anybody's heard me blaming the Alberta NDP government. But
No,
if anybody
I'm
thinks
sorry.
that Bob Ray,
General
but if anybody
Manager.
thinks that Bob Ray's NDP government in Ontario did well, then I mean, again, let's not get into the history. We have a future to look at.
Mr.
We have-
Housefather, we're ending
But
it.
Bob Ray's a liberal.
Okay, gentlemen,
As
we're ending it
James
right
said.
there.
He was an NDP guy when he was premier.
Okay,
Running an
gentlemen.
NDP government.
We're gonna spend more time driving the Canadian car looking through the windshield than the rearview mirror, so let's gotta move on, okay?
Agreed.
Here we go. The next theme is Canadian women. Mr. Hughes, I haven't heard from you in a while, so I'd like to ask you a question. What does the term feminism mean to you?
That's a great question. I consider myself a feminist. I consider myself someone who believes deeply in a society where equality is the first, second, and third rule. And that's one of the reasons, another one of the reasons I'm so proud to be part of the NDP. We have a party that almost has 50% of our candidates are actually women. 43% are women, and we're on the road. It's deeply in our core to women. We've got a whole variety of initiatives that we want to get out the door if in fact we're elected on this issue. One of the first ones is within 90 days of forming a government, we will finally create the Commission of Inquiry that's so long overdue to start to look in the issue of missing and murdered Aboriginal women. Just take a breath there, take a pause there, that in Canada today, women can go missing and murdered and we have no record of it. We have no idea what happened to them. You got to take a breath when you think about it. And the Conservative government is simply basically said, let's pursue those cases in the criminal in the criminal courts where possible. The problem is it's still going on, and looking forward to trying to prevent it from ever happening again requires a deep reflection on why it's happening and indeed how to prevent it. So we will take that on. We will take that on immediately upon forming government. But we'll do so much more. We will make sure 50% of appointments to government agencies and organizations are women. We're going to make sure that happens. We're going to reinstate funding for women's shelters right across the country. We've got to protect women from violence of all kinds.
Mr. Hughes, I just want to come back to what you said. Are you suggesting you're going to have a quota system? Is that what I'm
A
understanding?
minimum of 50% of appointees will be women.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that.
You heard
Okay,
it. Would you
perfect.
like me to say it again?
No,
Okay, is that clear?
it's a little radical to me, but okay. Anthony, would you like to?
So I just wanted to
let
say, if I
me
may,
let you finish.
as I say, the list is very long, so
Quickly.
I'll let others talk, but the biggest centerpiece in our program on the social side is affordable daycare right across this country. And affordable daycare is a family issue, affordable daycare is an economic issue, but it's also a women's issue. As I say, the stats are many, but in terms of getting low-income single parents out of poverty, there is no better proven way than affordable daycare. And that is something I would, along with youth employment, affordable daycare is one of the reasons that I'm with the NDP and why I'm so proud of what we stand for.
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Housefather.
So the question was, do you consider yourself a feminist? Yes, I consider myself a liberal feminist.
Actually, I said, what does feminism mean to you?
Well, okay, what feminism means, I'm going to get there. What does feminism mean to me? Feminism means to me that women are treated exactly the same as men and given the same opportunities.
Good.
It's not to distinguish roles between women and men. It's to say that women and men deserve the same opportunities. And so for me, the Liberal Party, we agree on women's shelters. We agree on the commission and enacting the recommendations related to Aboriginal women. But for me, the main issue is that every young girl in this country can grow up believing that she can do anything that she wants to do and has the opportunities to do that. And so what I would again say, because you're looking at 4 men here, is look at what that person has done in their career and to show that they've been committed to the equality of women. I'll give you an example. As mayor of Côte Saint-Luc, you all know that the public service that city managers, that the senior people in most cities are men, are francophone men. In Côte Saint-Luc, our city manager is a Jewish woman in her late 30s. Our associate city manager is an Italian woman who's in her early 40s. Our directors are mostly women. Without saying anything, without ever doing anything to discriminate one versus the other, I've hired the most competent people for positions, and we have a unique city. We're the only city where our director staff, our management staff is almost all under 50, and the majority are women. I have a woman director of public works in Côte Saint-Luc. There's not one other city on the island that is a woman director of public works. Our city manager was a head librarian. I thought she was incredibly talented. I plugged her out of the library and made her in charge of the bureaucracy of the city. Our associate city manager was also in a traditional women's field, human resources. I plugged her out of human resources and made her the associate city manager. My record of supporting women and promoting women is vastly different than almost any mayor that you have across Quebec. So I think that will signify what I intend to do about the issues that mostly relate to women when I'm in office.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sagala.
Yes, I'm a feminist.
And what does that mean to you?
Equality, eloquently said by Anthony. I must say, I will show my age a bit, but when I was a young boy, I'm probably the only one in the room. In our family, my mother came from a French-Canadian family, 11 children. And the men were sitting in the living room, drinking, and have a foul language, woman in the kitchen. And you would never catch a woman, they would say, dinner is ready. You know, because if they go there, they will heard things that they want. And me, a little boy, was coming. So it was not long ago where in Quebec you could see men and women having two different. And to me, I was finding it shocking. You know, and I don't want to play the violin and say we know they're more talented than us and look at the university and so on and so forth. To me, it was incredible. My mother was an entrepreneur as well. She had a hair salon, but nevertheless, you know, she paid for a house by her work and so on and so forth. So she was modern for that regard, but the mentality was not there. So in the last 30, 40 years, there have been a tremendous, and since I live almost 5 years in France, France is not even as the same level. Perhaps if you go to France, you'll see these differences. There are other countries where you say, wow, the woman and men issue, the balance here is better. I don't know if you never felt about this. But definitely, and this is for me, unleash talent, you know. Yeah, so feminists for these reasons. And,
so would you say, are the conservatives,
well, but the thing, for instance, there's a bit of empowerment, like for instance, the Banque de Développement, $700 millions pour financer les entreprises appartenant à des femmes. Empowering again, you know. You want to be entrepreneur, you're women, we're going to, a ring of entrepreneur, make them work together. It doesn't mean that it's only us that could do these kind of things, right. But definitely, you know, we're pointing quota, more of them. Anthony runs his city, he's saying, I'm sure it's not positive discrimination because this is unfair, you know, it's just because of talent, you know, they're there, they can do it, and they deliver, the staff delivers at the top, right. You know, so that's how it should be.
So it's based on merit, is what you're saying. That's
based on merit and, you know, empowerment, and bring them together. For instance, in the wine industry, it's amazing to see how many vineyards now are owned by women now, because it used to be a very man thing, you know. Now, enologists, chateau owners, sommelier, and they have a better nose than us, so don't start.
Mr. Cox, would you like to comment on
Yes, please. The world will be saved by Western women, won't it? That's the expression. Well, in my family, in my personal life, my wife is the breadwinner of the family. I was the one who raised the kids at home. So it's a rather unique perspective in our society, because I got some looks when I'd be the only guy dropping off my kids at daycare. I don't know what feminism is, really. I believe, like most of the gentlemen, Anthony put it the most eloquently. That was wonderful. I wish Melissa was here. Melissa would tell you what feminism is. For me, it's equality, but I do believe that women have the duty to themselves to take over. to take over what they want. What you want to do is up to you. I can say whatever I want. We can say whatever we want. We're guys, man. So we're white guys on top of that. So, I mean, we haven't had to fight that much. We haven't had to fight for a vote. But when I look in the history books, women were beaten for that. Hey, thank Murdoch Mysteries, eh? Murdoch Mysteries had a whole episode about women's suffrage. That's what your four mothers went through to vote, to have the equal rights. They fought. You have to keep fighting. You know, I can give you all the platitudes that you want, but it's your fight to have, and it's your fight to win. So I'll empower you. I'll be if you're smart, if you want something. Catherine over there, who's helping me with Melissa's. Trying to be Melissa's replacement has helped me immensely. We've had wonderful conversations. I'm just too nervous to remember everything that we talk about. But it's women like her who I look to and I go, wow, we're in good hands. If you grab for what you want, it's up to you. It's all up to you. You have to. There's a struggle for sure. But there's a struggle for everybody. Yours is a bit more hefty, but you have the strength to do it.
Mr. Hughes, you get one last
But
rebuttal on
it's
this.
still, I mean, your points are good ones.
Yeah.
But there's still barriers, right?
Absolutely.
Something like 71 or 72% is the number regarding pay equity.
Average is 8,000 less than men.
Work of equal value. Still got about a gap of about 30% to cover to get the average wages of women up to where they are.
Glass ceiling.
For men. And the other thing that really is something we always have to take into account is that 1 woman in 2 in Canada has had the experience of violence and being threatened and being nervous around men. We still have it's still this palpable sense that we have not we're not anywhere near close to eliminating the threat of violence in our society. And we have to work on those things. I mean, we have to work on those things in schools. We have to work on those things in families. We have to really lower the microscope on that, because it is insidious and it sits unspoken a lot. And we can talk about pay equity and job opportunities and entrepreneurship and daycare and all those things. But actually eliminating, and Sue Montgomery, who many of you have heard of, the NDPer who ran for the nomination, is a good friend. She's spoken about this. I mean, the hashtag "Being Raped Not Reported" has galvanized women to start to speak about these issues more.
But
we need more of that.
I think part of that has to do with how men have to raise better sons to understand the difference of what's right and what's wrong. And unfortunately, there's so many broken families that boys have no one to turn to usually. There's not many of you in the world who are trying to help everything, right? Most men are too actively pursuing their careers. They're too active out of the house and not being there present for their sons to show them a man behaves this way. And I think personally, I think that's one of the biggest issues when it comes to violence against women, is that men have to be more responsible for the sons they're raising.